There we go. All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the town of Waukesha. It's Thursday, June 13th here, 2019 at about 6:32 p.m. And we're going to start tonight with a meeting of the Committee of the Whole of the town board members. Again, this is an informal discussion. It'll be limited to a half hour in length. The topic of discussion tonight is going to be communication with town residents and response to their concerns. We've got a couple of things put together that we may follow through on. Again, we're not keeping minutes tonight. There'll be no formal action taken. All members of the board are present this evening with the exception of Supervisor Durr. So we're called to order. I had put together a quick little thing and had Kathy pass it out that I thought might kind of guide our discussion, at least through the first part of it. And there were some questions that have been raised in the past about public comments or citizen comments at town board meetings, plan commission meetings, and so forth. So my suggestion maybe to try to do this in a little bit of organized manner. Again, it's informal discussion, but maybe just kind of walk through some of that. I might point out that any action on this is not on the agenda for later this evening, but if we come to kind of a consensus on some of this, this could probably put into something for action at the next meeting of the town board. What I did, or what you're looking at there, is just kind of broke this apart and revised a little bit of a possible statement for public comments or citizen comments in our agenda. So we'll just read that first part in and then we can comment on it. And it says per sections 19.83 parens 2 and 19.84 parens 2 of the Wisconsin statutes, I'm going to get that kind of leave to fill in the blank whether this would equally apply to town board plan commission or joint town board plan commission meetings. We'll receive and pick and choose the words as you see fit, comments, concerns, information, and or questions from the public. And then I put the notes under that. We can begin to discuss this. I didn't review this with Attorney Macy before the fact and not even looking for an immediate response at this point in time, but whether at some point in time you can confirm whether those references to Wisconsin statutes are accurate and complete. The other thing, and I think we've been through it before, and you can maybe confirm the understanding that I have and I think others do, we are not compelled to allow for public or citizen comments during these public meetings other than public hearings. So that's, I guess, a discretionary decision that the town board could make. And then opening that up to discussion. Maybe just to Attorney Macy, is that accurate to reflect? And I think that's even been printed up in the Towns Association magazine and so forth. We're not required by law to provide opportunity for public comment. Is that fundamentally true?
That's correct. No governmental body is required to do it.
Okay. So I guess maybe even start with that part of it. Are we inclined to continue to allow for public comments, citizen comments, whatever you want to call it, at town board plan commission and or joint meetings? Anybody want to jump into that one? Okay, well, I guess unless somebody says otherwise, I'm going to assume that that's a yes. So just a little bit the homework part of it. And again, you can make suggestions, Attorney Macy, whether that should even reference statutes. I see some people refer to it that way. I didn't create that out of clean cloth or whether or not we can look at that. Second, then I guess statement of that would say something the following effect: each person who wishes to address, and again, town board plan commission, joint town board or plan commission, may do so at the podium for a maximum. We have a little bit been in different places on that. I think typically at this point in time we're restricting that to 3 minutes. I just put in 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, and we need to talk about the duration of time if you want to have a time constraint on it. And I added the words reasonably extended at the discretion of the chairperson. So open that up for discussion. Anybody have thoughts about time restriction and what would be appropriate?
I'll just comment that I believe 3 minutes is enough time, but I think sometimes the discretion of the town chair should be allowed. If the person's got some direction and the conversation's going in a positive direction, I think it's fine. It's when we get some repetition from one person to the next, and that's when you need to restrict it to 3 minutes or
Okay.
less even, but
Okay.
I think if you feel as the conversation is progressing and it's making a valid point, I agree that you have the discretion to do that.
Okay. Jim or David, thoughts on that? You okay with that?
I'm fine with, I guess, all of the above.
Okay.
You have a legal problem with the reasonably extended, because the first person you let do it, then everybody else says you better let me do it, or you're impeding my First Amendment right. So I just gotta tell you, you'll be subject to a challenge if you
Yeah.
arbitrarily or, don't have a guideline or something that says when it can be extended and when it can't. That's why most boards don't have it. They just, they allow it, if there's a unique, if they don't put it in the rule, because then everybody says, well, I'm not done yet. I prepared 5 minutes, so you
All
gotta
right.
extend to me. So I wouldn't recommend you necessarily put it in your agenda, but you can, but that causes issues.
So-
My job is to tell you when there could be issues, right?
So your recommendation would be, if we find it appropriate to do that in practice, that might be one thing, but don't have it written in those words. Is that, I'm not trying to put words in your
No,
mouth,
that's what I'm
but,
saying.
okay.
You characterized it correctly.
All right.
I mean, if there's no one here but one person, and you got a short agenda, and they're making,
Sure.
so, they called you ahead of time, and you said, I've got 6 things, or they're reading, something that's pertinent. I mean, I only have one community that actually has a stopwatch on, they've had to have it, and,
Understand.
3 minutes is a long time. We don't have a lot of people who have pertinent information
Sure.
or are gonna speak for more than 3 minutes. But I wouldn't recommend you put it in, because everybody's gonna say their information's pertinent, and Mr. Chairman. put
I
it
understand
in.
that. All right, so his suggestion is that we strike that. Is everybody comfortable with that? I guess we could effectively do that in practice if we saw it appropriate, but don't put it in there, so we'll strike that. Next, a statement, and I think we've generally got this now in there, but it would be public, and again, you may want to help us even with the word choice, whether that should be public comments or public information or whatever it should be, addressed or appropriate, I mean, whatever those appropriate words were, but they go to the town board, the plan commission, or the joint town board plan commission is appropriate as a body, so they're not addressed to anybody individually. I think that's pretty benign. Any thoughts about that? Is that appropriate, John?
Yeah, the statute, as you put, says the public notice of the governmental body may provide for a period of public comment, so I always like to use the word right out of the statute. So
All right.
I would call it public comment.
Okay,
And absolutely, you should address the body. It's the governmental body that they're there to give their comment to. So I would recommend you follow with that also.
okay. The next one kind of goes hat in hand with that, and you may want to suggest the verbiage for that. I mean, this, that any comment, concern, or question, whether that should just be limited comment. I mean, you can speak to that in a minute, but needs to be directed to an individual member of the Town Board Plan Commission, Joint Town Board Plan Commission, or staff. Perhaps that is not appropriate, but did I finish the sentence on this? Any, which is directed to an individual member will be deemed out of order by the chairperson of the meeting. Is that appropriate, and would you suggest some cleanup on the language on that?
Well, just off the top of my head, and we'll come back, I assume, with the final.
Sure.
I might want to recommend you just say any comment directed other than to the governmental
Sure.
body.
Okay,
Because then we don't have to worry about it staff or individuals or me, or it's other than the governmental body.
Okay.
It covers everything.
okay, makes sense. Are people on board with the concept of that, and let Attorney Macy clean up the language? Is that okay? All right. The next one is all comments, it says concerns, questions, you maybe want to just limit that to comments or whatever, but should be presented in a respectful manner. Is it appropriate? I don't think anybody could disagree with that. Is that appropriate or necessary to include that, or not?
Well, it's sad to say, unfortunately, in this day and age, I think you have to
It
say
needs
it.
to be in there,
You know,
okay, all right.
We seem too many times where people are upset and they need to be removed.
Okay. So can we leave that to Attorney Macy if he wants to clean up again? I put the comments, concerns, or questions, if that's simply limited to comments or whatever, but just let him recommend cleaning up the language, but leave the concept of that in. Is everybody on board with that? Okay. The next one, and again, we're kind of big borrowing and stealing this from other places. It's no public applause or response will be permitted. I mean, this is written to say, and will be deemed out of order. I put the note behind that, whether that's repetitive or redundant, or whether that says something more. Again, is it appropriate to have that in there? And do we need all that language, or is that saying much the same thing?
It says much the same thing, it's just whether it reads better in people's minds, your minds, but your point is well taken.
Okay, I mean, any thoughts about that? You're saying we can choose whether we want to leave the end, will be deemed out of order in place. You don't much care about that? Anybody have a preference? Leave that in or take it out? Does it add something?
I'd leave it in, I think it adds something.
Okay, so leave it in. Anybody disagree with Jim? Okay, so leave that in. The next thing said at the end of the public comment period, I want to just even back up half a step, and you could maybe advise us on this. I know we now reference citizen comments or citizen comments, whether that's appropriate or whether it's more appropriate to call it public comment or whatever. I mean, I don't know that we need to discuss this at this point in time, but you might suggest on that, Attorney Mason. But it says the end of the public comment period, the members of the, and again, if you want to clean that up with the body present or whatever it is, may engage in limited discussion on the information received. Do we want to strike that completely? I mean, my thought is on that is we can basically respond by telling people we'll follow up on something. I mean, we're not going to engage in any debate, response, discussion, or whatever, so that should that simply be left out in its entirety. Do you have a recommendation on that?
I do, and we should go back to the other ones though too. What the Attorney General says is that, and you've correctly stated it in 83-2.
Do you want to make sure you're talking in the mic?
I'm sorry. In 83-2 and 84-2, which references these sections, they talk about the potentiality of the governing body. We, in our years of experience, have recommended against, because what does limited mean? You know.
Sure.
And I wanted to tell you what the Attorney General said. During such period, the body may receive information from the public and may discuss any matter raised by the public. If a member of the public raises a subject that does not appear on the meeting notice, however, it's advisable to limit the discussion of that subject and to defer any extensive deliberation to a later meeting for which more specific notice can be given. In addition, obviously, the body cannot take formal action on a subject raised in public comment unless the subject is identified on the meeting notice. So the Attorney General over the last number of years, including our new Attorney General, warns against having any kind of, any extensive deliberation. And I don't know what that means. If you're talking about, as I always gave the example, somebody comes in and says, you really should paint the water tower. And everybody goes around the room and says, yeah, I think we should paint the water tower. And then somebody says, well, what color are we going to paint it? Well, I think green's a good color. I mean, when do we reach that this isn't extensive and you've resolved the whole issue, and then you say to the clerk administrator, put it on the next agenda? Well, you've already decided you're going to paint it and what color you're going to paint it in the limited discussion. So our advice has always been, we politely listen to people, and you can refer it. You can say, put that on the next agenda. Or if it's a pothole situation, you say, if the DPW director's here, you say, would you take care of that, Bill, and report back next month, on what happened on that? Or you can defer where it's going to go so the citizens know you haven't ignored them, but I don't recommend a lot of discussion.
Okay. Can I just ask, so we move it along, will you give some thoughtful consideration to the wording that you would suggest for that part of it?
Okay.
So when it comes back to us, is that fair with everybody? Let him ponder on that. The next one says, no action will be taken during the public comment period. I think that's pretty straightforward. Is that appropriate and necessary to have that in there?
That's always a good reminder. And it tells the public that you can't take action.
Anybody object to that? Okay. Then I put a couple of others down here that I think head in a little bit different direction. I think we had a very brief discussion of this once previously. I think, Jim, you even had some thoughts about it, but the question is, should those who wish to speak be required to sign in before speaking? I'm assuming that's our prerogative to do that if we choose to do so. Is that right?
Yes.
So do we want to do that? What that would be name and address, and perhaps even simply a brief statement of topically what they want to address? We don't require that now.
I think it'd make it easier.
Okay. If for nothing else, it would hopefully help clean up some of we might still have them do it, but name and address, and I mean, otherwise that's kind of challenging. Does anybody have an objection to that?
I don't have an objection, is the question. If somebody doesn't sign in, then are they restricted or not allowed to speak at all then if they decide so later on that they do want to speak? Or
I guess,
how would that work?
I guess my thought would be, and I mean, everybody else weigh in on that, if somebody arrives a bit late and they're filling the thing out, I mean, if they want to chase the thing up quick before we finish it, I mean, I would think we'd give them a chance to do it. I mean, once the public comment period is done, I don't think late arrivals get a second kick at it. But I mean, if they get that thing handed in or sneak it up before we're done with it, I guess I'd be okay with that. Does anybody object to that?
No.
Is that reasonable or appropriate? Okay, so we'll put something together to that effect, make them do it. Then the other one that I had here that kind of pertains to it, that may involve some discussion at length, but should the opportunity to speak, should it be restricted to individuals who are town residents? Should it be restricted to individuals who are town residents or town property owners? I mean, we have property owners who are not necessarily residents. I mean, I guess to the extent that we've got a handful of renters, we've got some residents who aren't property owners, so we get a little bit of both. And then maybe even the bigger question is, should we allow, I put in here anybody, but if somebody has something to say which is pertinent to the town of Waukesha, but they're not a town resident or a town property owner, should they be allowed to speak? That's one question. And maybe one of the other things is it kind of goes hat in hand with that. I didn't put it in here. Should people want to speak, should they be restricted to items on the agenda? We've been back and forth on that before. I think we need to a little bit debate that issue. One of the things that I just kind of point out is occasionally, I mean, we have a elected representative or someone show up who we have no reason to expect to be here that wants to impart information. Do we make exceptions to that? Do we tell them to sit down? We're certainly not going to have people come up and talk about, you know, the plight of penguins in Antarctica or that type of thing. But two questions there, I guess. Who should be allowed to speak under public comments, and should they be restricted items on the agenda? Thoughts?
Well, I think it should be restricted to residents, property owners, or business owners in the town. Otherwise, and we've had it here, you get some national speaker for an organization that wants to come and, you know, tell you their thoughts on be it herbicides, pesticides, something to that effect, that they don't really have a connection to the town.
Okay.
Most municipalities that I've been to limit it to allowing it only to somebody that's got a direct connection to that municipality.
Okay. Other thoughts?
I'd have to agree with Jim on that, actually.
Okay.
'Cause it's,
Bob?
I'm gonna go along with Jim on it also. I think we've had that in the past where we've had people from not even the area testifying or speaking for a certain development or
Okay.
whatever, and they're not even remotely affected by it, other than the fact they're speaking up for his benefit. So I have to agree. I think it should be restricted to people in the town.
Then I think we're probably all on the same page on that, and maybe even Attorney Macy, do we need to include verbiage for residents or property owners? Is that unnecessary or whatever? I mean,
Yes.
I don't know that we're going to do that. We should include both of those.
Town residents, town property owners, town business owners, and I might recommend you also put elected officials who represent individuals in the town, or you could just say elected officials.
Okay, everybody go with that?
I mean, if the mayor wanted to come over and
Understood.
talk to you about something, would you be wanting to allow him to speak? Do they have to represent someone in the town, or can it be any elected official?
I mean, I guess the elected officials, I don't want to be in a position we have to tell somebody to sit down or, you know.
So
they'll come
elected
back.
officials will have 4
Yeah.
categories. Okay,
Right.
got
Everybody
it.
comfortable with that? Okay, then do we restrict people to items that are on the agenda? Thoughts about that?
I don't know.
You want to,
He says yes, and
you want to think about that a little bit?
Well, I agree with Jim. I'm on the fence on this too, to a point. I mean, is there a way to, we talked about signing in. Is there a way to sign in and list what you need to speak about and then have the discretion of the town chairman or somebody decide if this is pertinent and we wanted to discuss that, or? is that
Unfortunately not.
Not,
You
yeah.
gotta set your rules in advance. It's just,
I mean-
otherwise, again, it's First Amendment freedom of speech problems.
Yeah, I'm all for people being able to come here and telling us they've got a problem with this area or this and that, but we have to limit that to, I believe, to, I don't know, 3 minutes is way too long. I think they can state their case in less than a minute and be done with it, but on a public
I
comment
mean,
part.
one of the things I thought about, if we want to restrict it to items on the agenda, one of the things we could do, and we kind of have to blow the dust off it, but we have provisions in our town ordinance, I believe, that citizens can actually get things placed on the agenda. Right on that, Kathy? So, I mean, one of the answers to that might be if people want to address an issue directly to the board, we're saying you can't speak under citizens' comments if it's not on the agenda. I mean, not at that meeting, but it would be their prerogative to follow the ordinance to get it put on the agenda. Is that appropriate, Attorney Macy? I mean, that would be an answer back to that if they want to speak
Absolutely.
about something at a public meeting. The answer might be, sorry, not tonight. It's not on the agenda, but if you really want to speak about that, put it on for next meeting.
Well, you can go one step further. You can say, are items previously requested to be discussed?
Sure.
So we don't have to make an agenda item, but if
Yeah.
they call Kathy and they say, I would like to come in and talk about the deer population, it's not on the agenda, would you place it? Then she would put it under
And they make it for a
comments.
request, and we do it
They
for a
can make
future
a
meeting.
request in advance. Well, you can even have it at that meeting, if when you approve the agenda, she
Oh, I
can give
understand
you a
what you're
list of who asked to speak
Couldn't
under
add that to
public
the
comment
agenda.
on items not on the agenda.
Sure.
And then you could
Okay.
say, I'll put it on there, and then we've satisfied that.
Is everybody comfortable with that? Gives us a little bit of guidelines, but a little bit of flexibility too.
That wouldn't require any board action if it's on the agenda, though, would it necessarily?
No, the chairman would decide
yeah.
when he puts the agenda together whether he thought it was pertinent. If they came in and asked for the marijuana referendum, he would decide whether he thought that was pertinent or not, and he would put it on, or not put it on, or deer, or any of the other,
What a fine example, Counselor.
Well, I just thought, I was making sure everybody in the audience was awake.
The other thing that we want to do, and that's a good thing, but I mean, one of the other things we're kind of striving for is a goal, or I've got, is when we put agendas out, and people ought to know that, and really not much in favor of amending agendas if we can avoid it. So, man, we need to, those kinds of requests, if they're going to go on there, they need to come in a timely manner, right? We can do that.
Before the week before.
Tuesday, the week before. I mean, you got to be like 9-10 days ahead. Okay. Can we maybe ask Attorney Macy simply not to put this kind of together into a coherent type of thing all put together, and maybe we can take that up on the 27th or something if it's ready to go?
Certainly. I have
Everybody-
one other that Kathy brought to my attention. I know we got another item to talk about, but letters, I'd like to recommend to you that you add a sentence that says, letters sent to the town board will not be read under public comment, but will be distributed to the town board members. We had an instance about 6 months or a year ago that somebody said, can I read letters? You do not want to open that door, because then you could have hundreds of letters sent by people, and
Okay.
you'd be here all night, because you couldn't say no if you didn't. So I'd
Yeah.
like you to, I think it's the rule now. I would recommend you keep the rule, and maybe since we're rewriting it, we should add it.
Okay.
We'll distribute them. If you send a letter in, she'll give a copy to each of the board members, which is fine, but we're not going to read your letter under public comments.
And we can get into that a bit. That's kind of interesting and timely, because we've got 5 letters tonight, I think 4 of which specifically ask for them to be read in, so that's a timely point of discussion. Okay, and I guess the last thing, does anybody see a reason, if this is put together, is there a reason to differentiate between a town board meeting, a plan commission meeting, or a joint town board plan commission? Is whatever this procedure is it fit all of those? Okay. Last thing, we can move on because we're heading towards
Well,
7.
let me just,
Oh, go
it's
ahead.
just town board, plan commission, and joint. It's not zoning board of appeals, it's
Correct.
not, yeah, I mean, I just wanted to make that clear, we're not,
Yep.
the directive, I know the issue was always plan commission or not plan commission, but I just wanted to make that clear, we're talking about town board, plan commission, and joint meetings. Okay, good.
And do you see any reason we can't use that same statement when we agree on it for all 3?
No.
Okay, all right, then, real quick, a couple of things I just put on here. I mean, we're gonna wrap this up pretty quick, because we did say we'll get on with our town board meeting at 7 o'clock. We started a couple minutes late, but we're not gonna run much past. Just a couple of things, and Kathy and I had a bit of a chat about this. I just put a thing on the bottom of their newsletters, and maybe she wants to speak to that a bit. I don't know what the history is, but the town has in the past, from time to time, sent out newsletters, and those are typically mailed out to town residents or town addresses, and whether some of those were done quarterly or semi-annually or whatever, just a little bit thinking of where we're heading in the electronic world and that type of thing. And I really think we might have a start on, but really would like to build a database of recipients. I mean, it would be easy to do a town newsletter electronically or email to people. We may still have to serve some people by mail, but I mean, rather than incurring all the expense and time to stuff envelopes and postage and all that type of thing, we can build a base for that, an email blast, we could get a lot of information out to citizens. We're not going to dive deep into that, but is that something we really want to try to consider to better communicate? We still have our town website, of course, for information, but if from time to time we want to do that, do we want to try to do that? Maybe you want to speak to that.
So our current website, in the documents area, we do, everything I put in there, anyone that subscribes to it automatically gets an update when I put it in. So if you're using it already, you see when I put something in for an agenda or a packet, a newsletter, if you happen to click on the newsletter and say you want, whenever we put a newsletter out, to be notified, it sends a notification to the subscribers. We use that currently. We just need to, I think, educate more people on that it's there for them.
Any other thoughts or comments about that?
Yes, one legal one is when you set up and request people to provide their email address, we recommend, because it's the law, they be notified that if a public records request is made, we have to give them the list.
Okay.
We cannot keep their email address confidential. Alberta Darling, Senator Darling took that case out and lost.
Okay, okay.
So what happened to one of my clients, they did it, it was very successful, everybody loved it, and all of a sudden they realized that they had to give it out, and people were very upset. So now if you're going to do it, we say right from the get-go, warn them.
Okay, all right, thank you. And for people in the audience, we're not discussing that tonight, but if somebody want to give feedback to board members or to Kathy or what or not on whether they think that's a good thing to do, we'd like to hear from you. Okay, we've got about 7 o'clock here, almost on the dot. I think we will close the committee of the whole meeting unless anybody's got anything more to say at this point in time. Okay, then the committee of the whole meeting will be closed at 7 o'clock, and we will then proceed immediately to go to the town board meeting of the town of Waukesha, June 13th, 2019, beginning at 7 p.m. And if you would all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Chairman Fisher?
Here.
Supervisor Reiki.
Here.
Supervisor German.
Here.
Supervisor Stigler.
Here.
Open meeting law compliance check. Can you confirm that we are doing well on that?
Yes, we have.
Okay. Item 5, how timely citizens' comments. I think we were just talking about that, weren't we? Anybody who would like to address the board, please come forward. And I think kind of a reminder before anyone speaks here, you might be tempted to do so, but unless we're going to want to waive the rules that are in place at this point in time, I think people really can't comment on the discussion we had during the committee of the whole. Does anybody see that differently, or do you want to relax that? I mean, at this point in time, that is not on the agenda per se. Any thoughts about that, or do you want to let people speak to that or not? It would kind of be outside the bounds of the
I
rules
have
at
no
this point in
objection
time.
to it, but I mean, I don't know, I mean, the counselor here.
Is that even
says it's
appropriate or not?
Appropriate or not to do that, but it's not agendized.
It's not on the agenda per se.
Well, our current rule doesn't say that it has to be.
It does.
I think this one does. Yes.
Well, somebody could argue citizens' comments is on the agenda. It's not an action item, but it's on the agenda.
I don't know what he said, but I guess you can talk about it if you want to. I don't know. That's why he makes more money than the rest of us put together. Welcome. Please proceed. Name, address, and share with us what you've got.
Hi, I'm Al Collins, Partridge Lane, South 51, West 23072. I had a question on the some ordinances that aren't being followed. Included in the property owner's 1917 tax bill was a letter from the town board stating that the DPW would not be cutting any more culverts in ditch areas in 2018 because of the town ordinance, section 3613. Maintenance at public ditches requires all property owners to maintain the ditches next to their property, but this is not being enforced. I called the town weed commissioner and asked him about it. He said he was addressing all the complaints, but that in 2018 he was told by the town administrator that he no longer had jurisdiction. This doesn't make sense. The town has an ordinance, and I have a copy of it here that spells out how the property owners are supposed to maintain their ditches and not interfere with the water flow. That's not happening. The weed commissioner is doing his job, and now he is told not to do it. It doesn't make any sense. Who's going to take responsibility for these ditches? They look terrible. He's improved the situation in every case that he has addressed. He's doing a great job. We need to give him more authority and not less. It just doesn't make any sense. The second question I have is on the road load limits and the changes that are being thought about. The limits are for road stability, obviously. They're not designed to handle the heavier loads. And also the safety factor. There's kids, there's dog walkers, there's strollers. We can't do favors for one individual on a whim, because where does it end, and how long does this continue? You know, that's all I have. Thank you.
And again, just went through this very limited, just a kind of an announcement thing. We will be having another committee of the whole meeting 2 weeks from tonight, and the topic of agenda for that evening is maintenance of town right-of-ways. That's kind of an all-encompassing thing. I don't think we'll get through all the issues at that night, but would encourage people to be here. And a couple of the other issues that you did in fact talk about, Mr. Collins, will be talking about downstream in the agenda. Who else would like to address the board? Go ahead.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Just as an example, that would be the type of situation, especially his first comment, and I didn't see where he went. He's blocked. But anyway, if you would meet with the administrator so she could explain to you what the weed commissioner's statutory duties are, because that might be part of the confusion, that the complaint really, she may tell you, and I'm not telling you what she's going to tell you, but I would suggest that you meet with her and get your explanation, because it may be that it's a complaint that has to go to the building inspector. He has limited duties, the weed inspector. I'm not speaking for her. I don't know what she said, but that's a great question, and you got to go to the horse to get the answer. Okay? Thank you. That's the kind of thing I like to do, is I don't like to leave anybody hanging.
Of course.
Even if it's for another meeting, if we can get them a solution. Without discussion, we can try to get a solution.
Exactly, and that wasn't a discussion, a debate, an extended question and answer, but at least it's responsive to a measure. Okay, who else would have a citizen's comment to share with us tonight? You don't need to be bashful. You can come up in large groups or anything you want. Names and addresses, please. If this is a duet or whatever, we need to know everybody.
Good evening. My name is Chad Niles. I live at W266S3588 Valley View Drive. Go ahead.
And my name is Jenny Wright, and I live 4 houses up from him on Valley View Drive at W266S3530 Valley View Drive.
We're here in support of letter H under new business. Our neighbors are going to be talking at that point. They're in the back of the room as well. Basically, the issue here is that Highway 59 is being rebuilt near X, where the bypass project is going through. We live on Valley View. We're right just west of that intersection. And as it's been up until the point of the construction, if you're going westbound, the 2 lanes merge to 1 to continue west towards North Prairie or further west to Eagle and that. And where those 2 lanes merge, we have a lot of issues with road rage where people are cutting each other off. People are driving on the shoulder as the 2 lanes merge because they don't want to merge with each other. I've had it where I've had people pretty much bumping me in my rear bumper when I'm trying to take a turn to the right to get onto my street. And if they don't like that, they're passing in the no passing zone going westbound into oncoming traffic on many occasions. Gene and Kathy came to the Traffic Safety Commission meeting that was held by Waukesha County at the start of May. The DOT engineers that came to that discussed it with everybody present in the room. The issues they had was that DOT, when they look at changing things such as the speed limit in that area, they're referring to the statistics that come from the community maps system, if you know what that is, and I can get you that information afterwards if you don't. But DOT looks at that information, which goes strictly off of the number of crashes that occur in that area, and then they look at what factors that cause those crashes. So because we haven't specifically had a lot of accidents where we've gotten rear-ended like my wife did at that intersection years ago, then DOT says pretty much pound sand. So the next course of action that they recommended is what's happening tonight under letter H. So we're here in support of that. Go ahead, you're gonna say something?
And also, since...
Get up real close to the microphone, please.
Since
Thank you.
the construction's been happening and it's down to 2 lanes now, they've reversed the traffic situation. I know my brother-in-law just this past Saturday came to a screeching halt. There's still skid marks there. He almost got in an accident. And so when we drive, either coming either way, we just slow the traffic down ourselves. And so we're just driving 35 miles an hour from Merrill Hills Road to Valley View Drive, or from the intersection up to Valley View Drive. And because people are so impatient, they're going so fast, and we can't even get in and out of our road. And even when the construction is finished, because there is 2 lanes, those people they're going, the speed limit that they're anticipating is going to be 55 miles an hour. And which we feel is just way too fast. I don't even know how the school buses get in and out of there at that price going over to the schools. So again, as on letter H, we're looking to propose to decrease that speed limit for everybody's safety.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Who's next? Come on up, please. Just a quick reminder, please get right up and close and personal to that microphone. We need a reminder even for us at the table. We are being live streamed. Please go into a library. People can go back and look at it. And if you go at some of us don't project very well some of the time, so you get valuable stuff to say. We want to hear it. Name and address, please.
My name is John Heller. I'm at W270S3128 Merrill Hills Road. I'm here to speak about item 7F, the proposal to waive weight limits on several roads within the town, including Merrill Hills Road and possibly others. I'm against that proposal. I know that it's intended to be temporary. We've had a dramatic increase in traffic, as you might expect, during the construction of the bypass, including large trucks and a lot of trucks pulling trailers with bulldozers and the like on them. And so there's already a tremendous amount of traffic that's exceeding the weight limits, and there has been the entire time that I've lived there without enforcement. And so my hope is that you would vote that proposal down this evening, because I think once the cat's out of the bag, it's going to be very hard to get it back in from an enforcement perspective, and I'm concerned about damage to the road. There's already been some on the shoulders, and there's been some erosion in some of those curves that are on Merrill Hills Road near my home as well because of the 18-wheelers coming through there. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
And thank you very much. Who's next, please?
Good evening, Mike Borchert, West 231, South 5205. Regard to item 7F on the agenda for this evening. Several years ago, there was a public workshop meeting by the town board, which I attended. The topic was the installing signs that were limiting the commercial traffic to not exceeding 3 tons and the designation of those roads. I believe the purpose of that meeting was to lessen the damage to our town roads. Each year, the budget for town repairs is always less than what the DPW supervisor recommends, and the town does what it can. The idea of allowing unrestricted, unlimited commercial traffic is only going to add to the burden that the town has of keeping up their roads. But even worse than that, if they're cutting through subdivisions or whatever, you're putting our residents at risk, and especially the children, which are going to be out of school now. We don't have sidewalks. They ride their bikes, they walk their dogs, whatever. And I guarantee you, those commercial trucks, even the ones that are making deliveries in there, are not doing the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. I see plenty of delivery trucks doing 35. And now you're going to increase that traffic. Just allowing one resident to get hurt or killed, and especially a child, isn't worth it at all. This bypass has been planned for many years. Everybody's known about it. They've had more than ample time to prepare for alternate routes and make other arrangements. My understanding is, it's a couple businesses that are interested in this just so they can save time and money. The bottom line is, it's only in the best interest of a few select people, not the town as a whole. And the board is supposed to make decisions that are best for the town as a whole and all the residents. There was an incident a number of years ago. A town resident had a backed up septic field, and he came to the board to request to get a truck in. And this was in the springtime with the temporary weight restrictions. And the board told him, I believe it was either he had to put up a bond or sign a waiver to pay for any road damage. And this was just one empty truck coming in and then pumping his septic and going out. And he was turned down, and he had to wait till the restrictions are off. So the idea of having this unlimited, unrestricted commercial traffic doesn't make any sense at all. So I strongly urge the board to not go along with this. And I know it's an inconvenience to a lot of people, but there's road construction throughout the state, throughout the country, and we all have to deal with it. I drive through the area too. Yeah, it slows down the traffic. I don't have any problems. We just have to deal with it. And different times of the day is going to be heavier than others. That's just part of life. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next? Please come forward.
Sandy Hom, West 230, South 3827 Milky Way Road. I agree with the road thing. I agree with the speed limit thing. I think there's tremendous confusion about the mowing and who's responsible for it. The gentleman read an ordinance that would suggest that the townsfolk are responsible for that. And yet, in today's agenda at 7E, we're going to discuss mowing and spraying in the town right-of-ways. And, I mean, I'm in favor of the town maintaining their right-of-way. So I think it would probably take the reversal of the ordinance that he read. But in any case, I have a master's degree from UW-Madison in the College of Agricultural and Life Sciences. And I specialized in insects entomology. And I'm here to urge you not to be using any sprays or herbicides on the roadsides. And for several reasons. One is there's groundwater runoff and subsequent pollution to our water table, to our private wells. Any herbicide that is systemic is drawn up into the plant and then passed to any creature that eats it or pollinates it. And even contact herbicides are detrimental to those that might eat or pollinate it, as well as to the water. There is the consideration of cost of buying the chemicals. And lastly, your employees are being exposed to those chemicals. And if you watch any TV at all, you'll see that there's billions of dollars available for people who have been exposed to Roundup. So I just think it's a bad practice for the town to get into, and I urge you not, I mean, I want you to take care of the right-of-way, hire young kids and pay them $7.65 an hour, but don't be spraying chemicals. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else would like to speak? Come forward, please. Last chance. Maybe just quickly then, as we wrap up citizens' comments, I think we would be wise to follow the advice that Attorney Macy gave us about not reading letters in. I'm just going to identify what we've got to make sure all the town board members do have these communications. I would think that's appropriate. Attorney won't go to the substance. There may be one or two that don't, or we may come back to them, and we may catch up to them at that point in time. But let me just identify quickly what we got. We do acknowledge receipt, I believe, Mr. Heller, who spoke, your email communication. I think that regarding weight limits on town roads, I think that was dispersed to everybody, so you should have that. One that I think is in your packet, we'll come back to it, but we do have email communication. I think there may be two of them, but from Genesee Town Chairman Sharon Lair, and we may come back and address that. We do have an email communication from Colleen Hom that again addresses the issues regarding spraying and the roads. I think everybody should have that communication. If you don't, you can say so. We have a communication from Lori Longtine that addresses, I think, some 4 issues, all that are issues on the agenda, items on the agenda. Everybody should have that communication. And lastly, we have a communication from Stacy Blank, a letter and email communication with that will also basically address the use of herbicides, and I think everybody should have that. So that said, we'll close citizens' comments. Item 6 is a report update on approved parking and no parking signs at the physical and forward lacrosse building. This is a follow-on from a previous meeting. I think Kathy has some information to share on that. Is that correct?
I do. You had Sean go ahead, the planner go ahead and work with physical and forward on their parking, doing the proper signage on the roads and on Quincy Road, as well as making sure that they identify their parking spots. After review, if you remember, engineer Janelli had said that there were no spots on the site plan and plan of operation for Sticks to use any of those parking spots. But once you actually pull the site plan and plan of operation up, Sean noticed that 9 of those spots are actually marked as, supposed to be marked for Sticks. The agenda, or the motion was to mark 21 spots that are on the physical and forward lacrosse buildings parking area. They have done that, but at the same time, they have also, Sean has approved them to mark they only needed 12 spots, but they had 13 spots available. They marked those 13 for physical and forward lacrosse, but the other 9 that were actually marked for Sticks, they marked them for Sticks. So their people don't use Sticks parking spots. Sticks people don't use their parking spots, and then they also, their signage for the road has also been approved. So they got a sign off from Sean. I just wanted to make sure that I notified you that when we were in the meeting, Engineer Janelli looked up a document and didn't really open the plan of operation where it says how many parking locations, but it didn't actually show them. And the parking locations are on the side that are close to physical and lacrosse, but not in the same location.
When did he sign off on that? Do you know by chance?
I don't know, a couple weeks ago.
Because as of today, there are still there are no signs for no parking along the roadway or not.
Okay, but he signed off on the design, so they have to have the signs made and put up. But they have gotten the approval from, Sean looked at where they were gonna put it, what kind of signs they were gonna do, and he signed off on that. So now they have to go and put up the signs.
Okay, so he signed off on the approval prior to the signs even being put up?
Well, he had to, yes, because what he was approving was the types of signs, where they were gonna put the signs, and, what locations they were putting the signs in. That's what he approved.
Okay.
If you would like the building inspector to go and review if the signs are put up before, when he approves the building permits, we can have him do that as well.
I think we should.
Okay, I can do that.
Thanks.
Can I make one other suggestion? That my recollection is that this topic was discussed at considerable length in front of the Plan Commission. I think there was some confusion and lingering questions about what was required and that type of thing. I would suggest that we put this back on for a report to the Plan Commission. Now that probably falls until, I think it's July 11th. But I think we should go full circle round to give that report. Maybe you could even ask Planner Malarkey to do that, and maybe he should even simply try to illustrate that. I know when we try to do it in words and stuff, it gets kind of complicated, but
Yes.
Would everybody support doing that so we can at least kind of close that door with information with the Plan Commission? And I mean, the town, it'll probably be a joint meeting, so the town board will be here as well, so maybe it's a bit of a do-over, but at least we can close the loop.
I can do that.
Okay, thank you. Anything more on that agenda item? Then we're going to go on to 7. Business 7A is noticed as discussion and possible action on confirmation of Tom Greenwald as a member of the Board of Appeals for a 4-year term. Term ends April 30th, 2023. At a previous meeting, I put his name up for appointment, and the pleasure of the board was that we have a resume or something from him or his appearance in person. So you do have in your packet, he did submit I believe he called it a bio. Has everybody seen that? And everybody satisfied with that? Unless there's any concerns about that, a motion to confirm his appointment to the Board of Appeals for that term ending on April 30th, 2023 would be in order.
I'll make a motion that we confirm Tom Greenwald to the Board of Appeals.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, motion by Supervisor Radke, second by Supervisor German to confirm the appointment of Tom Greenwald to the Board of Appeals for a 4-year term ending April 30th, 2023. April 30th, 2023. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. 7B, discussion and possible action on a hearing to appeal professional fees. Request by Janet Robbins, ROBINS, parens Family Chapel, close parens per section 2-244D. I think, are you, Kathy, going to walk us through that?
I am. So in your packets, you have a letter from Janice Robbins stating she feels she should not have to pay the professional fees. You also have the MOU she signed stating she was the responsible party, as well as Norman Hansen, which stated he was the property owner. You also have copies of the bills and the ordinance on professional fees. I'm just going to review the history of this situation. Ms. Robbins reached out first to the state and was told she needed approval from the town building inspector concerning having a daycare center in the basement at the church. When she met with spoke with the building inspector didn't see an ordinance that allowed a daycare center in a P1 district. She was asked to make an appointment with the planner. She did make that appointment knowing that there was going to be a charge. On 1/10/19, Norman and Janice came in to meet with Planner Malarkey about starting a child care center at Family Chapel, or we know it as Rockwood Church. Sean stated that child care was not currently allowed in the town zoning district, the P1 district, told the applicant that it would require a conditional use. The planner was going to explore possibly other alternatives to avoid a conditional use and follow up with the applicant. On February 14th, Planner Malarkey then reviewed his report to the Plan Commission asking for clarification of the classification of a nursery school or daycare center. The Plan Commission determined a nursery school is old terminology and would be considered synonymous with preschool. Daycare center, Plan Commission agreed on the 14th that a daycare center on a P1 property is permissible and no action was needed. We contacted Ms. Robbins after the Plan Commission determination. She stated that the person that wanted to set up the daycare no longer is interested. I've reached out to the property owner on the MOU that was stated on the MOU as Norman Hansen, and explained that Ms. Robbins had not paid her professional fees and that they were going to be on the agenda today. He said he was going to contact her. So today, I received a phone call from Cindy Christofferson. She is the senior pastor at Rockwood Church. And she stated that Norman doesn't own the property, and she didn't give Janice or Norman permission to incur any expenses on behalf of the church. Neither of them are even regular attenders of the church. Pastor Christofferson stated that it was a misunderstanding or a miscommunication between Ms. Robbins. When she approached her about the daycare center, she told Ms. Robbins she would like to see a business plan before any decisions were made. Ms. Robbins took it upon herself with Mr. Hansen to come in to the town. That's where we're at. You have her letter requesting that, or stating that she doesn't believe that she needs to pay her bills. Pastor Christofferson is asking for because the normal process is that they can come to a hearing then if they don't pay if they don't pay this professional fee, that it goes on their taxes. That would go to Rockwood Church. And they didn't sign either one of the responsible party or the property owner's signature on the MOU. I do want to make note that after the conversation with Ms. Christopherson, I did go to the Rockwood Church website and check to see if she was actually the pastor, and she is. So, so that's where we sit.
I'm taking it none of those parties or their representatives or anything in the audience tonight, is that correct? Okay, assume to such discussion. I guess I'll kick something off on that. I mean, we're looking at a couple of different ideas. Is one to request that both Ms. Robbins and Mr. Hanson appear at the next meeting? Is that one option? I don't know whether it accomplishes anything or not.
I have a very strong feeling that they won't show up. I mean,
Well,
that's
that's
my
my
theory on that. But
sense as well.
I don't know if there's something we should be doing in a procedurally wise in the future to avoid something like this, maybe to, if somebody's coming in here to request that and they're not the owner of the property, maybe we need to have a letter from the owner of the property in the future to say, you know, we're okay with this person. We have made contact with them. I don't know what else you could do here, but I got a feeling we're gonna be stuck with this bill. But
But we have not.
I don't know what the options all are, but.
We had Norm Hanson actually sign saying he was the owner of the property. We don't question when somebody signs saying they're the owner of a property. We've never had the need to question someone that they are actually the owner or that they are going to be responsible after the fact.
No, I agree. I'm not pointing fingers here. I guess I'm saying, in this day and age, it seems like everybody finds a way to get around things and misrepresents themselves. And maybe we need to take another step next time and say, hey, verify that this is the real owner and has the authority to proceed with this. Because somebody's got, obviously, nobody's responsible here the way it looks to me, that, or is going to take responsibility. I'm sure these people, Robbins and they're going to be long gone. And the church is obviously not even aware that this even was taking place, the way it sounds to me. I mean, am I wrong on that or not?
That's correct. The pastor was not aware of this until today when she got a call from Norman or Mr. Hanson that this was going to happen and that they were going to be responsible for the fees. She would like some leniency on this bill, if we could, if the board so chooses.
I guess let me ask a question. The way we got it on the agenda here was discussion, possible action on a hearing to appeal professional fees. Did we just put that on there to discuss it, or you're saying that in fact is the request by this Janice Robbins for a hearing? I mean, that literally is her request,
yeah.
or that's how we understand it?
Well, when I spoke with Ms. Robbins on the phone, I told her the process. She returned with this letter, and so this was the closest way that I could move forward on this bill, this outstanding bill. I had no idea that they were not, they did not have permission to look into this on the church's behalf before today. But the hearing is our proper process for if somebody is contesting their bill. And so that's what she was, I believe, expressing to us on her letter.
What would that hearing to do that appeal, what would that be? To have her or her and Mr. Hanson come to the next meeting? What would that hearing be? Can you or Attorney Macy answer that? What would the hearing to appeal be, and when would that be heard and where? Right here?
The appeal to the town board upon receipt of a timely request for hearing. Town board shall hold a hearing regarding the property charges at the next scheduled meeting, which is today. Such hearing shall be preceded by posted public notice, which we did.